Hello and welcome back to Total Football, where we round up the best and worst action from the Champions League. We actually left Chelsea to their business tonight, getting knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid. Instead, we focused on the big game in Naples, and it delivered. Milan are through to the semi-finals of the Champions League for the first time since 2006-07, after drawing in the Diego Armando Maradona. And with Inter 2-0 up against Benfica following the first leg of their quarter-final clash, it looks like we might have a Milan derby, guys, in the semi-finals for the first time since 2003. Obviously, we wait to see the result of that one. This felt like a game that was about key moments, really. And actually, Napoli showed an amazing amount of domination of the ball and chances created across the two legs. They averaged 64% possession across the two legs. They had 39 shots. They got 10 on target versus Milan's 18 and 6. But McCubs, the key moments went for Milan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about the goal, I guess. I mean, you know, that first half, you know, Napoli, especially in the first 20, 25 minutes, were totally dominant. It felt like only a matter of time before they'd break through. But to be fair, Milan defended really, really well, didn't they? I think the halftime stats had it 10 shots to Napoli to Milan's 4. But only 2 on target for Napoli to Milan's 3. And I think it's testament to, you know, players like, well, Calabria, who I personally think was the man of the match, dealing with Kvaratskhelia, Tomori and Kjaer, you know, kind of reviving that partnership that they originally sparked up last season, were pretty infallible. And yeah, just Milan's ability to track back so fast whenever Napoli broke was brilliant, especially in the second half. But I mean, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. The goal, I mean, Ndombele, who I thought had a really good first half up until that point, lost the ball. Leao picked it up and just that 80-metre run, skinning Di Lorenzo, skinning Rahmani, and then just the composure and intelligence to see Giroud and just to pick him out, especially considering Giroud had missed a penalty, you know, just 20 minutes before. Of course, that came from, you know, good work from Leao as well. Poor from Rui to bring him down, to be fair, but Leao does win that penalty. And yeah, I think it is very much like Pioli's Milan. You know, we saw that in Serie A last season. They were, by many respects, not the best team in Serie A last season, and yet they won it because they won a number of key games in very key moments. They are just super, super clinical in big games. We've seen that less this season in the domestic game, but, you know, in the 3 weeks building up to this game, they smashed Napoli away. And they beat them, obviously, in the first leg as well. And then they took the advantage in a first half where at points they were under the cosh. And yeah, they somehow just keep on producing in those key moments. And that Giroud goal, I think, set the tone for the rest of the game. It couldn't have come at a better time, 2 minutes before half-time. Osimhen has that goal ruled out for a handball. I mean, just minutes earlier as well, before Milan go ahead, Leao taken out by, Lozano taken out by Leao in the box.
Was a penalty? Yeah.
I think it was a penalty, but I understand why it wasn't given in the end, because it was so... He does get the man before the ball, but it's a fraction of a second before he gets the ball. And I think if you're the referee, you can't necessarily tell at that speed. And I guess he had judged it I guess he just couldn't tell. I mean, if you can't tell, then you can't necessarily give it. And then the replay doesn't... It wasn't, well, I mean, the replay is conclusive, but the replay also shows how marginal it was, and so it's not clear and obvious.
You can't overchange the ref's on-field decision based on what is essentially VAR's slightly different perspective on it. Right?
Yeah,
it has to be
really stonewalled, doesn't it?
It wasn't enough. So I can completely see how you could argue that it was a penalty, but because a lot of people would say otherwise, I think it balances out.
And also, you look at the end of the game, you know, then fast forward to 80 minutes, and I think they're quite lucky to get that penalty off that Tomori handball, given that Tomori's falling to the ground. Usually, if a player is falling to the ground and it hits their arm, that is waved off, because that's the only place they can put their arm as they're falling over. So I think it did balance out a little bit, but at the same time, it was a key moment in the game, minutes before Milan take the lead. and so there is a bit more importance to it. I would have felt aggrieved for sure if I was anyone in that Napoli team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we will get on to some of Napoli's missed chances, particularly some headers for Matheus Oliveira, particularly one in it was around the 65th minute from a corner I thought was particularly gilt-edged. But Henry, you were purring all game about this Milan defensive performance.
It was amazing. They had, you said at the top of the show, they had, 64% possession over the two legs. They had like 26% possession in this game, something like that, 27%. It was an unbelievable performance because it is the kind of game where you can look at the stats and say, oh, Napoli, they're all over them. They were, but they never really looked like they were going to score at any moment in this game. It was unbelievable from the guys at the back. I mean, 18 clearances between Tomori and Kjaer. I'm saying it again. If Tomori doesn't get a chance in this England squad, I just don't know what on earth is going on. I thought he was exceptional. He's into a Champions League semi-final. Fully deserved. I thought Krunic, he's just shown why he's such an important squad player to this Milan side. 5 shots blocked from midfield. And then Calabria. I mean, it's one of the great performances you'll see in the defence up against Kvaratskhelia, who did get past him a few times in the second half. If he scores in that sort of 1 minute into the second half, if he puts that into the roof of the net, we've got a completely different game on our hands. But up to that point, Calabria was so focused. I mean, listen to these stats. 9 out of 15 ground duels won. 8 tackles completed, 6 clearances and 6 interceptions. I mean, it's
insane.
It's insane from, it's a captain's performance on an absolutely massive night. And Milan really are just Napoli's kryptonite this season. I was saying Napoli go 10 games conceding 1 goal, come up against Milan and lose 4-0, and it just seems to throw off their entire kind of balance in the last few weeks. And got the goal at the end, but really that was from piling tons of pressure on. Really, it was too little, too late. Huge save from Magnon, who also does deserve a huge amount of credit.
Yep.
He is very clearly standing out now as one of the top 3 goalkeepers in the world, in my opinion. He's just been unbelievable wherever he's played at the moment. Huge for Lille, huge for Milan last season, huge again. So yeah, I mean, what a save from that penalty, because really you do not want to be in a situation where you're defending a sort of 1-goal lead with 15 minutes to go in that atmosphere. So yeah, what a defensive masterclass. Bodies in the box, just never looked like they were going to break through Napoli. And yeah, I think this is a fully deserved victory from a team that really didn't even have the ball.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They controlled, and it was just that doubling up, as you say. I think Brahim Diaz and Calabria partnered really well on Kvaratskhelia, and Bennacer playing as that forward or that forward midfielder in front of Krunic and Tonali, dropping so deep as well. And they were just so effective with all those balls coming into the box. They either blocked the cross or made the cross look quite average by their great positioning, heading balls away, except for that header that Osimhen scored late on. They really didn't give him much opportunities whatsoever. And every time Kvaratskhelia did eventually break through, which really wasn't very often, his finishing was wasteful. Also missed a penalty on a big night for the guy as well. Really disappointing. It did just feel like across the tie, nothing really went for Napoli in terms of, well, it's not really luck per se, because they didn't really create their best opportunities either. I don't think they played at their best, particularly in this game as well. But to lose Anguissa to a red card, which we agreed at the time was quite soft. Kim Min-jae was suspended. They lost Politano and Rui to injury in the first half as well. Those are 4 key starters that they were missing. Politano does swap in with Lozano regularly, so it's not an absolute disaster on the right wing. But Rui, Kim Min-jae and Anguissa have been so solid and imperative to their run this year.
You say that Politano was probably their best player before he went off, wasn't he? He was the one that really looked like he was going to make an impact. He was getting his shots off, probably came closest to actually testing Magnon in the first half. So losing him, because Lozano didn't really offer anything in the rest of that game, did he? So yeah, I think Politano was a huge loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just feels like Napoli, they don't really have Champions League experience at any later stage, really. This was their first Champions League quarter-final. I know Milan, a lot of their Champions League history came before this current crop of players, so it's kind of irrelevant. But at the same time, it felt like they had more belief over the 2 legs. I think that club is sort of so inherently built into the Champions League. It's very similar to Real Madrid in that way, with Maldini as their technical director. So, and so many legends around the side that just think that this is their competition, even though they haven't delivered in it for so long. And it feels like in the last 16 tie, where they didn't play particularly well against Spurs, they've just built their way through this competition, and I do worry for Inter coming up against this side. It does feel like they have massive momentum. For Napoli, 14 points clear of Lazio at the top of Serie A, 22 points clear of Milan, but they didn't manage to get over the line in this tie. And it did feel like they had some absences, but not enough of their key players turning up and delivering on the biggest stage. I mean, McCubs, we talked about some of Milan's better players, but in terms of the numbers of some of Napoli's more disappointing ones, like what was Kvaratskhelia saying, for example?
I mean, if you just looked at Kvaratskhelia's stats, you'd think he'd had a world-class performance. He had 6 shots, created 5 chances and won 10 dribbles. So
his stats aren't everything.
Yeah, so he did beat Calabria a few times and probably beat a few more. Probably beat Krunic and beat Brahim Diaz a few times as well. And yet he was largely dealt with. He didn't take Calabria outside enough. He was cutting in a lot. So many kind of crosses blocked. He just didn't have his kind of powers. And I think, Milan have just learned to deal with him over the last few games. He hasn't really cut through in any of the 3 games that they've played recently. You go into the midfield, which I think Napoli did control the game at least. Lobotka, I thought, didn't put a foot wrong all game really. 96% pass accuracy. Wow. He kicked off most of those attacks. His kind of ability to spread play is great. Created 2 chances as well, and again, Ndombele, one of their better players in the first half, and yet gave away the ball in the build-up to that goal. Otherwise was really useful, especially in attack. I think Kvaratskhelia really was the key. It was clear that doubling up on him, whether that be Brahim Diaz, whether that be Krunic, was completely key to cutting off Napoli's supply line. Osimhen obviously scored in the 93rd minute. That was his first shot on target of the whole game. I mean, he is coming back from injury as well, so they can probably count themselves unlucky in that sense too. But there was just almost, that connection between him and Kvaratskhelia, which made Napoli the most frightening attack in all of Europe for the first, 5 months of this season. It was just completely cut off, and that was the key to stopping them today. I think someone like Krunic, who probably doesn't get enough plaudits, I just thought he was absolutely brilliant. He was key to dropping in whenever Napoli were breaking into the box. It felt like he was always the one, either clearing up a loose ball or just blocking that pathway to Osimhen. It was brilliant from him. It's just that the discipline of that Milan side under Pioli, I mean, it's been brilliant for a long time, but to see it in a Champions League quarter-final against, far and away the best team in Italy this season, is just really, really impressive. The team spirit in that side is just, especially given the limitations in many areas of that squad, is just brilliant. And that back line is just, it's just superb. The characters in that back line are just brilliant.
Yeah, it deserves a lot of credit as well. And we didn't see, I think you're so right, we didn't see Napoli's sort of forward play this year has sort of been defined by those quick, incisive passes through midfield, often using a wall pass, where you pump it in, pump it back, one touch, and then move. And Milan just completely shut that down entirely. I thought their midfield was excellent. They were so alert and concentrated, really. I think you just have to be so concentrated when you play Napoli, because they can spring on you in multiple directions at different times. They were really, really excellent. Henry, let's have a quick word on Rafa Leao. He did ultimately...
we have not even spoken.
He did ultimately create the goal that put Milan in a great position in this tie. What a performance from him, and once again proving that he is a guy for the big occasion.
Well, it's all about moments, isn't it? And he took his. We saw him really only have 2 sort of great runs in the box, and one of them 3 in fact. One of them results in a penalty. The second one, he is in beautiful assist, and the third one, he looked like a menace when he gets on the ball. He's just so scary. 6'4", you were saying. It's just
according to Wikipedia,
glides over the pitch. I mean, it was the battle of the left wings today, him versus Kvaratskhelia, and I think he came out top because ultimately he made the difference. But we've seen him do this in the past few weeks. He did one at the weekends where he dragged a shot wide. I think he scored a goal recently in a similar fashion. He is capable of doing this. He's got this in his locker. He had a bit of a quiet period this season where it looked like he'd sort of maybe run out of a bit of steam, but he's back. And I mean, listen, Milan do have some huge, as you're saying, some huge characters in there. I know they haven't been this far in a competition like this before, but they did win Serie A last season. They've got people like Kjaer, who've got to the semi-final of the Euros. They've got a World Cup winner in Giroud. They've got plenty more. They've got Ibrahimovic off the bench, who's got that tons of experience. And in Leao, they've got a weapon who's going to trouble any team that he comes up against if you can get the ball into him and if he can make something happen. So you cannot write off this AC Milan side when they've got that weapon and when they can show that they're so defensively solid and disciplined against the best.
Yeah, for sure. If I was Denzel Dumfries or Matteo Darmian, I'd be pretty worried about the prospect of coming up against Rafa Leao. Of course, Benfica can still overturn that deficit. Guys, what did you make of Milan's progression through to the semi-finals for the first time since 2007 following that 1-1 draw in the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. We, for one, were really, really impressed. What a performance from them. Rafa Leao in particular taking all the plaudits. Guys, how far do you think they can go in this year's competition? Can they even win it? Get your thoughts in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this video, look forward to our review of Total Football tomorrow, where we'll be talking about Bayern Munich versus Man City, potentially Inter versus Benfica as well, and we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.